All right, let's do this example here. Now, notice in this example, the leading coefficient is not 1, which means that we have to first make sure that this leading coefficient is 1 before we can complete the square. So that's one thing that you need to keep in mind, that completing the square will only work when the leading coefficient is 1. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay, we want the leading coefficient to be 1. So in this case, the first thing I'm going to do is divide everything by -2. So if I divide everything by -2, then now my equation becomes x squared plus 3/2 x plus 5/2 is equal to 0. And now, this is obviously not a perfect square, because if you take half of this, and square it, you're definitely not going to get that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 5/2 from both sides. So I'm going to do it that way. So I'm going to do x squared plus 3/2 x is equal to -5/2. And now I'm going to complete the square on this side. So again, I'm going to take half of this coefficient, the middle coefficient, and square it. So if I take half of this, that gives me 3/4. And then if I square that 3/4, that gives me 9/16. Okay? So if I complete the square, I'm going to write x squared plus 3/2 x plus 9/16. And then I'm going to write 9/16 over here as well, because whatever I add to one side, I have to add to the other. So I get -5/2 plus 9/16. Okay? Now, this side will reduce to, or simplify to, or factor as a perfect square. So that's going to be x plus 3/4 quantity squared is equal to, now this side here, I'm going to get a common denominator, so that's going to make this into, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 8. So that'll give me 16ths here, and that'll give me 40. Okay, and so then this reduces to -31/16. Okay, so that's where we're at so far. So now I've got a situation where I can now use the square root property. And so if I use the square root property and take the square root of both sides, that gives me x plus 3/4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of -31/16. Okay? And if I simplify this, let's bring this up here. So if I simplify this, I get x plus 3/4 is equal to, well, let's subtract here. Let's subtract 3/4 from both sides. So I get x equals -3/4 plus or minus the square root of -31/16. So now let's deal with this radical. So we get x equals -3/4 plus or minus. And then now we've got negative here, so that's going to bring out an I, but we also got a 1/16 in here, which is a perfect square. And that's going to give us a fourth. So we're going to plus or minus 1/4 I times the square root of 31. 31 is prime, so we can't reduce that any further. Okay, and that becomes our solution set. So our solution set is going to be -3/4 plus or minus 1/4 I times the square root of 31. Okay, and of course we can simplify this a little further by just writing this as square root of 31 over 4. So we'll get I equals -3/4 plus or minus the square root of 31 over 4I. And again, so we have two solutions. All right, not bad. Just practice.